Victoria Hayes sat on the floor of her cramped apartment, surrounded by unopened bills and final notices. Her hands shook as she held the eviction letter, reading the same words over and over. 30 days. She had 30 days to come up with. 3 months of back rent, or she and Olivia would be out on the street. The numbers swam before her eyes. Between her mother's medical bills, her student loans, and the failed business venture that had drained her savings, Victoria was drowning in debt. I had taken the job at Sterling Enterprises 6 months ago, hoping her salary as an event coordinator would help her climb out of the financial hole. Instead, she had only managed to sink deeper. Her phone rang, displaying the name she least wanted to see at 7 in the morning, Cameron Sterling. Her boss, the CEO, and the most frustrating man she had ever met. Victoria answered with a tired sigh. "Miss Hayes, my office in 1 hour? Don't be late." His deep voice was crisp and commanding before the line went dead. No greeting, no explanation, just orders. That was Cameron Sterling in a nutshell. The man of ice. Victoria arrived at Sterling Enterprises with 10 minutes to spare, clutching her portfolio and trying to smooth the wrinkles from her dress. She had barely slept, her mind consumed with worry about the eviction. The last thing she needed was whatever crisis Cameron had dreamed up this morning. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, all gleaming glass and modern art. Cameron's assistant, Jessica, gave her a sympathetic look as she gestured toward the corner office. Victoria knocked once before entering. Cameron stood at his desk, reviewing documents with the focused intensity of a predator stalking prey. At 34, he was one of the youngest billionaires in New York, having built Sterling Enterprises into a real estate empire. His black hair was styled perfectly, his navy suit tailored to showcase his athletic build. He looked like he had stepped out of a magazine spread about powerful men who never smiled. "Sit down, Miss Hayes," he said, without looking up. Victoria settled into the leather chair, her exhaustion making her less patient than usual. "What's this about, Mr. Sterling?" "I have the charity gala prep meeting in 30 minutes. Cameron finally looked at her, his dark brown eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "You look terrible." "Thank you for that." "Observation," Victoria replied, too tired to filter her sarcasm. The business proposition, something flickered across Cameron's expression. It's almost like amusement before his usual mask returned. He sat down across from her, placing a thick folder on the desk between them. "I have a problem, Miss Hayes, and I believe you can help me solve it." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "This is about the gala seating arrangements. I already told you that your father cannot sit next to the mayor after what happened last year. This isn't about the gala." Cameron opened the folder, revealing documents Victoria recognized with growing horror. Bank statements, debt collection notices, her eviction letter. "This is about your financial situation and my inheritance." The blood drained from Victoria's face. "You investigated me? How dare you? My father's will requires me to be married by my 35th birthday to maintain full control of Sterling Enterprises. If I'm not married, my cousin inherits half the company." Cameron's voice remained steady, businesslike. "My birthday is in 90 days. Victoria stared at him, trying to process this information through her exhaustion and anger. "I need a wife. You need money. I'm proposing a business arrangement." Cameron pulled out another document, a contract. "We get married, maintain the appearance of a real relationship for 1 year, then divorce quietly. In exchange, I pay off all your debts. Immediately, provide you with a generous monthly allowance during our marriage. Let's give you a settlement of $2 million when we divorce." The impossible choice. Victoria's heart pounded as she looked at the contract. $2 million. No more debt collectors. No eviction. Her mother could get the surgery she needed. Olivia wouldn't lose her home because of Victoria's failures. "This is insane," she whispered. "You could marry anyone. Models, actresses, socialites, who would actually want to be your wife." "I don't want someone who has romantic illusions about our arrangement," Cameron said. "I need someone intelligent, professional, and discreet. Someone who understands this is purely business. You've worked for me for 6 months. You're competent, you know how to navigate social situations, and you clearly need what I'm offering." Victoria stood up, pacing to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Below, people rushed through their morning commutes, unaware that her entire life was balanced on the edge of this decision. She asked quietly. Cameron joined her at the window, standing close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. You would move into my penthouse. You would attend social events together as a couple. You would wear my ring and convince everyone, including my father, that we're genuinely in love. But privately, we maintain separate lives. You keep your job, your independence. This is a contract, nothing more. Making the deal, Victoria turned to face him. This close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, evidence that the ice-cold CEO was still human. I have conditions. I expected nothing less. Was that respect in his voice? First, Olivia comes with me. Your penthouse has multiple bedrooms. She's my family, and I won't leave her homeless. Victoria crossed her arms. Second, I control the wedding planning. If we're selling this story, we do it properly. Third, we attend couples therapy as part of our cover. It will make the relationship look more real. Cameron considered this, then nodded. Agreed. Anything else? Yes. Victoria met his eyes directly. If either of us develops real feelings, we discuss it honestly. I won't pretend in public and in private. And when this ends, we end it cleanly. No drama, no games. You have my word. Cameron extended his hand. Victoria looked at his outstretched hand, knowing that taking it would change everything. She thought about her mother in the hospital, about Olivia's worried face when she had told her about the eviction, about the life she had dreamed of before debt had crushed those dreams. She placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and firm, his skin surprisingly rough for a man who worked behind a desk. For just a moment, Victoria felt something electric pass between them, a spark she quickly dismissed as nerves. When do we start? She asked. Today I have a jeweler coming at noon to fit you for an engagement ring. We're announcing our engagement at tomorrow's board meeting. Tomorrow? Victoria's voice rose. That's impossible. People will never believe we fell in love that quickly. Cameron's lips curved into something almost resembling a smile. Then we'll tell them we've been secretly dating for 3 months. Office romances are common enough. My assistant will handle the details. The new reality is Victoria left his office. Her mind raced with everything that had just happened. She had agreed to marry Cameron Sterling, the man who had criticized her work, demanded perfection, and treated emotions like business transactions. For 1 year, she would be his wife. She pulled out her phone to call Olivia, trying to figure out how to explain this. How do you tell your best friend that you just agreed to a fake marriage with your billionaire boss? The elevator doors opened, and Victoria caught her reflection in the polished metal. She looked the same, tired, worried, overwhelmed, but everything had changed. In 90 days, she would be Mrs. Cameron Sterling. The question that haunted her as she descended to the main floor was simple but terrifying. Could she really pretend to love a man she barely tolerated? And more frightening still, what would happen if the pretending became real? As she exited the building into the morning sunlight, Victoria realized she had just made either the best decision of her life or the biggest mistake. Only time would tell which it would be. Victoria stood in the marble lobby of Cameron's penthouse building, surrounded by her entire life packed into 6 suitcases and boxes. Olivia stood beside her, eyes wide as she took in the chandeliers, the doorman, and the private elevator that required a special key. This is really happening, Olivia whispered. You're actually doing this? Too late to back out now, Victoria replied, though her stomach churned with anxiety. The engagement ring on her finger felt heavy, a constant reminder of the deal she had made. The diamond was enormous, catching the light with every movement of her hand. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and Victoria's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking view of the city skyline. The living space was enormous, decorated in shades of gray and white, with modern furniture that looked expensive and uncomfortable. Everything was pristine, perfect, and completely impersonal. Cameron emerged from what appeared to be a home office, still in his work clothes despite it being evening. Welcome. Jessica prepared the guest rooms. Yours is the master suite on the Right, Miss Park. You'll be in the bedroom across the hall. Olivia raised an eyebrow at Victoria, silently asking if they were really going through with separate bedrooms. Victoria gave a slight nod. This was a business arrangement, after all. The first night after Olivia had retreated to her room, Victoria found herself alone with Cameron in the vast living room. The silence between them was awkward, heavy with the weight of their agreement. "We should discuss logistics," Cameron said, pulling out his tablet. "The engagement announcement is tomorrow. I've arranged for a stylist to meet you at 8 in the morning. You'll need appropriate clothing for the board meeting." "Appropriate clothing," Victoria repeated, bristling at the implication. "What's wrong with my regular work clothes?" "Nothing is wrong with them for an event coordinator. But as my fiancé, you'll be scrutinized differently. The board members' wives are particularly judgmental." He looked up from his tablet. "This isn't a criticism, Miss Hayes. It's reality." Victoria sank onto the leather couch, suddenly exhausted. "You can call me Victoria. If we're supposed to be engaged, you should probably use my first name." Something softened in Cameron's expression. "Victoria, and you should call me Cameron, at least when we're not at work." Cameron, she tested the name, finding it strange on her tongue. For 6 months, he had been Mr. Sterling, her demanding boss. Now he was supposed to be her loving fiancé. He sat down on the opposite end of the couch, maintaining a careful distance. "I know this arrangement is unconventional, but I want you to know that I'll honor our agreement. You'll have your independence, your privacy. This is purely professional." Victoria studied him in the soft lamplight. Without the harsh office lighting, he looked less severe, almost human. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why didn't you just find someone you actually cared about? Surely there's someone you could have married for real." Cameron was quiet for a long moment. "My life doesn't have room for that kind of complication. Love makes people irrational, unpredictable. This arrangement is cleaner, simpler." "That's incredibly sad," Victoria said softly. He looked at her with surprise. "Is it? I thought you'd understand. You agreed to this for practical reasons, not romantic ones." "I agreed because I was desperate. But that doesn't mean I think contracts are a substitute for real connection." Victoria pulled her knees up to her chest. "Haven't you ever wanted something more?" Cameron stood abruptly, his walls snapping back into place. "It's late. You should rest. Tomorrow will be demanding." The board meeting the next morning, Victoria barely recognized herself in the mirror. The stylist had transformed her into someone who belonged on Cameron's arm. Her dark hair was styled in elegant waves, her makeup subtle but flawless. The burgundy dress hugged her curves while remaining professional, paired with heels that made her legs look endless. Cameron's eyes widened when she emerged from the bedroom, though he quickly masked his reaction. "You look perfect." "I look expensive," Victoria corrected, smoothing the dress nervously. "That too." He offered his arm. "Ready?" The car ride to Sterling Enterprises was tense. Cameron briefed her on the board members she would meet, their personalities, their likely reactions. Victoria tried to memorize everything, but her mind kept wandering to what came next. They were about to lie to everyone. In the elevator, Cameron suddenly took her hand. Victoria jumped at the contact, but he held firm. "We need to look comfortable together. The board will be watching for any sign this isn't genuine." His hand was warm, his thumb absently stroking the back of her hand. Victoria told herself the flutter in her stomach was just nerves. The announcement at the boardroom fell silent when Cameron and Victoria entered together, his hand possessively at the small of her back. Victoria recognized several faces from company events, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. Cameron's father, Richard Sterling, sat at the head of the table. He was an older version of Cameron, with silver hair and sharper edges. His eyes narrowed as he took in their joined hands. "Gentlemen, ladies, before we begin today's business, I have a personal announcement." Cameron pulled Victoria closer. "Victoria Hayes and I are engaged to be married." The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Richard's expression remained unreadable. "How long has this been going on?" Richard's voice cut through the noise. 3 months, Victoria said, finding her voice. "We kept it private because of company policy about workplace relationships." 3 months, Richard repeated, disbelief clear in his tone. "And none of us noticed." Cameron's hand tightened on Victoria's waist. "We're both private people, Father, but we're ready to share our happiness now." One of the older board members, a woman named Patricia, smiled warmly. "Congratulations. When's the wedding?" 8 weeks, Cameron said smoothly. "We see no reason to wait." Unexpected complications after. The meeting Richard cornered them in Cameron's office. Victoria's heart raced as the older man closed the door, his expression stern. "Do you think I'm a fool?" Richard demanded. "This is about the inheritance clause, isn't it? Father, don't lie to me, Cameron. I know you've been avoiding the marriage requirement. Now suddenly you're engaged to your employee? The timing is remarkably convenient." Victoria stepped forward before Cameron could respond. "Mr. Sterling, I understand your skepticism, but your son and I genuinely care for each other. Yes, the timing works out well for him, but that doesn't make our relationship any less real." Richard studied her for a long moment. "I hope you're telling the truth, Miss Hayes, because if this is a scheme, I'll make sure you both regret it." After Richard left, Victoria collapsed into a chair. "That went well. He's always suspicious," Cameron said, but she could hear the tension in his voice. "We'll just have to be more convincing." Crossing lines that evening, Victoria found Cameron in the kitchen, surprisingly making dinner. He had shed his jacket and tie, his sleeves rolled up as he chopped vegetables with unexpected skill. "You cook?" she asked, surprised. "I'm full of surprises." He glanced at her. "I thought we could eat together, start building a routine that looks natural." Victoria hopped onto the counter, watching him work. "Where did you learn to cook?" "My mother taught me before she died. I was 12. His hands moved with practiced efficiency. "She said that a man who could feed himself was never truly helpless." "I'm sorry about your mother," Victoria said softly. Cameron's hands stilled for a moment. "It was a long time ago." "That doesn't make it hurt less." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Victoria saw something vulnerable in his eyes before he turned back to his cooking. "No, it doesn't." They ate dinner at the massive dining table, the conversation surprisingly easy. Cameron asked about her mother's health, about how she had gotten into event planning, about her dreams before debt had consumed her life. Victoria found herself telling him things she rarely shared, about her father leaving when she was young, about putting herself through college, about the business she had tried to start that had failed spectacularly. "You're braver than you think," Cameron said quietly. "Starting a business takes courage, or stupidity," Victoria replied with a sad smile. "Sometimes they're the same thing." He poured her more wine. "For what it's worth, I've seen your work. You're talented, Victoria. Just after this year, you could start over, build something real." Victoria met his eyes across the table. In the candlelight, with his guard down, Cameron looked different. Less like the cold CEO, and more like a man who had learned to protect himself by keeping everyone at a distance. "Thank you," she whispered, dangerous territory. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She found herself wandering the penthouse, ending up in front of the windows overlooking the city. The lights sparkled below like scattered diamonds. Couldn't sleep either. Cameron's voice came from behind her. Victoria turned to find him in pajama pants and a t-shirt, looking more human than she had ever seen him. Just thinking. He joined her at the window, standing close enough that she could feel his warmth. "About what?" "About how strange this all is. A week ago, you were just my difficult boss. Now we're engaged, living together, lying to everyone we know. Having second thoughts?" Victoria shook her head. "No, the deal is too good to back out. I just wonder if we thought this through. Playing house is more complicated than I expected." Cameron turned to face her, his expression unreadable.
"Also, you're..."
"Not what I thought you were," Victoria admitted. "The cooking, the questions about my life, the way you talk about your mother, you're more than just the cold CEO. Is that a problem?" Victoria looked up at him, realizing how close they were standing. His dark eyes held hers, and she felt that electric spark again, stronger this time. "It might be. Our agreement assumes we'll stay strangers. But I don't think that's possible." Cameron's hand came up to her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Victoria's breath caught. This wasn't part of the deal. This was dangerous territory. "No," he said softly. "I don't think it is either." For a heartbeat, Victoria thought he might kiss her. But then Cameron stepped back, his walls slamming back into place. "Get some sleep, Victoria. We have the couples therapy session in the morning." Victoria watched him walk away, her heart still racing. She touched her face where his hand had been, feeling the warmth of his touch lingering on her skin. This was supposed to be simple. a business arrangement with clear boundaries. But standing there in the darkness, Victoria realized with growing dread that nothing about Cameron Sterling was simple. And she was beginning to think that their carefully constructed contract wouldn't be enough to protect her heart. Dr. Michael Turner's office was nothing like Victoria expected. Instead of clinical and cold, it was warm and inviting with comfortable couches and soft lighting. Cameron sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance that felt too deliberate after their moment by the window the night before. "So," Dr. Turner began, his kind eyes moving between them, "tell me about how you two fell in love." Victoria felt Cameron tense beside her. They had prepared a story, rehearsed the details. But sitting here, about to lie to a therapist, felt wrong in a way the board meeting hadn't. "We worked together," Victoria started. "At first I thought he was impossible, so demanding, so cold. But then I started seeing beyond the surface." "What did you see?" Dr. Turner asked. Victoria glanced at Cameron, surprised to find him watching her intently. "I saw someone who pushes people because he cares deeply about excellence. Is someone who learned to protect himself by keeping everyone at arm's length. Someone who's more afraid of vulnerability than failure." The room fell silent. Cameron's expression was unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes. "Cameron," Dr. Turner said gently, "what made you fall in love with Victoria?" Cameron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than Victoria had ever heard it. "She challenges me. She doesn't let me hide behind my title or my wealth. She sees me, the real me, and she isn't afraid of it." Victoria's heart skipped. That wasn't the rehearsed answer. That was real. The charity gala 3 weeks into their engagement, the charity gala Victoria had planned finally arrived. She had poured herself into the event, determined to prove she could handle both her job and her new role as Cameron's fiancée. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and elegant decorations. Victoria wore a stunning emerald gown that Cameron had insisted on buying, though she had protested the expense. When she had emerged from the bedroom, Cameron had stared at her for a full minute before simply saying, "You're breathtaking." Now, as they moved through the crowd, Cameron's hand never left the small of her back. They had fallen into an easy rhythm over the past weeks. Morning coffee together, dinners where they actually talked, moments of unexpected laughter. The lines between pretend and real were blurring dangerously. "You've done an incredible job," Cameron murmured in her ear as they surveyed the room. "This is the best gala we've ever held." Victoria smiled up at him. "Hi, praise from you." His hand tightened on her waist. "I mean it, Victoria. You're talented. I've been thinking about promoting you to director of events after we're married." "Cameron, we talked about this. No special treatment because of our arrangement." "This isn't special treatment. You've earned it." His eyes held hers. "You going to start believing in yourself?" Before Victoria could respond, Richard Sterling approached with a woman Victoria didn't recognize. The woman was stunning, with perfect blonde hair and a designer dress that probably cost more than Victoria's car. "Cameron, I'd like you to meet Natasha Volkov. She's interested in investing in Sterling Enterprises." Richard's smile was sharp. "Natasha, this is my son and his fiancée, Victoria Hayes." Natasha extended a perfectly manicured hand to Cameron, completely ignoring Victoria. "Mr. Sterling, I've heard so much about you. Perhaps we could discuss the investment opportunity." "Over dinner sometime. I'm afraid my evenings are spoken for," Cameron said smoothly, pulling Victoria closer. "My fiancé and I prefer to spend our free time together. It's the crisis." The next morning, Victoria woke to find Olivia sitting on her bed, her phone in hand and tears streaming down her face. "Olivia, what's wrong?" Olivia handed her the phone without speaking. Victoria's blood ran cold as she read the headline, "Sterling Heirs Engagement a Sham. Sources claim marriage is contract-based." The article detailed their arrangement with frightening accuracy. The timing of their engagement, the inheritance clause, even the separate bedrooms. Someone had leaked their secret. Cameron appeared in the doorway, his own phone in hand. His face was pale. "My father wants to see us immediately." The drive to Richard's estate was silent and tense. Victoria's mind raced. Who could have known? Who would have told? Richard was waiting in his study. The article pulled up on his computer screen. Is it true? He demanded without preamble. Cameron stepped forward. Father, let me explain. Is it true? Richard's voice was like ice. Victoria felt Cameron's hand find hers, his grip tight. Yes, he said quietly. It started as a business arrangement. Richard's face flushed with anger. Do you have any idea what this will do to the company? The scandal, the mockery? I knew you were desperate, Cameron, but I never thought you'd stoop to fraud. It's not fraud, Victoria said, her voice shaking. And it's not what you think. Then enlighten me, Miss Hayes. What is it? Victoria looked at Cameron, seeing the defeat in his eyes. In that moment, something crystallized inside her. She was done pretending, done lying, done hiding from the truth that had been growing between them for weeks. It started as a contract, she said clearly. Cameron needed a wife to secure his inheritance. I needed money to save my family. It was supposed to be simple, temporary, purely professional. And, Richard demanded. And somewhere along the way, it became real. Victoria turned to Cameron, her heart pounding. I fell in love with you. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, but you. The man who cooks dinner and asks about my day? The man who still misses his mother and pretends he doesn't need anyone? Man who's terrified of being vulnerable, but tries anyway. Cameron stared at her, his expression stunned. Victoria, I know this wasn't part of the deal, she continued, tears streaming down her face. No, I'm breaking our agreement by developing feelings, but I can't keep pretending anymore. I love you, Cameron Sterling. And if that means I lose everything, then so be it. The choice the room was completely silent. Richard watched them both, his expression unreadable. Cameron's hand still held Victoria's, though he hadn't spoken. Finally, Cameron turned to his father. She's right. It did start as a contract. But Victoria is the best thing that's ever happened to me. She makes me want to be more than just the cold, ruthless businessman everyone expects. She makes me want to be the man my mother would have been proud of. He pulled Victoria to face him, his hands cupping her face. I've been terrified to admit this, even to myself. But I fell in love with you somewhere between the therapy sessions and the dinners and the moments when you refused to let me hide. You're brave and stubborn, and you see straight through every wall I've built. Cameron, Victoria whispered. I love you, Victoria Hayes. Not because of our contract, but in spite of it. We're supposed to be a temporary solution to a problem. Instead, you became everything I didn't know I needed. Then he kissed her, and not the careful, staged kisses they had shared for photos. This was real, desperate, filled with weeks of suppressed emotion. Victoria melted into him, her hands tangling. In his hair as she kissed him back with everything she had been holding inside. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Richard was watching them with an expression that might have been approval. Well, he said dryly, that was quite a performance. It's not a performance, Cameron said firmly, keeping Victoria close. Not anymore. Maybe it never really was. Richard stood, walking to the window. The damage to the company's reputation will be significant. The board will demand answers. Then I'll give them answers, Cameron replied. I'll tell them the truth, that I made a mistake, that I tried to manipulate a situation instead of trusting in something real, and that I found love in the most unexpected place. And if they force you out, Richard asked. Cameron looked at Victoria, his eyes soft. Then I'll build something new. With her. 1 year later, Victoria stood in the penthouse, looking out at the city as the sun set. So much had changed in a year. The scandal had been intense, but brief. Cameron had been honest with the board, and while some had been angry, most had respected his integrity. Richard had even become an ally, admitting he was glad his son had found real love. The contract had been torn up months ago. They had gotten married anyway, in a small ceremony with just their closest friends and family. Olivia had cried through the entire thing. Victoria heard Cameron come home, his footsteps familiar now. Arms wrapped around her waist from behind, and she leaned back against him. How was your day? He murmured against her neck. Good. The new event company is officially launched. We signed 3 major clients today. I'm proud of you. He turned her to face him. Have I told you today that I love you? Victoria smiled. Only twice. You're slipping then. Let me make it 3 times.
Oh.
Cameron kissed her softly. I love you, Victoria Sterling. Thank you for seeing past my walls. Thank you for being brave enough to fall in love with me. Thank you for catching me, Victoria replied, touching his face. And for showing me that sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never planned for. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Victoria thought about the desperate woman who had agreed to a fake marriage a year ago. She had been looking for a way to survive. Instead, she had found a way to truly live. The contract had brought them together, but love had made them stay. And that was the most beautiful story of all. The end.